Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Pocalypse Road by Lilith Saintcrow, narrated by Erin Deward. I killed the car. A brand-new, bullet-spattered brown and white RV rollicked down the unplowed, snow-choked freeway, swaying dangerously as it slalomed past abandoned cars clotted near exits and on-ramps. A black 4x4 and a white and red Chevy truck followed in its wake, anxious herd dogs hanging back only because cutting in to slow their charge might founder it. Melting slush splashed from miraculously unharmed tires, and after a good 15 minutes of wild motion, the RV's brake lights came on and stayed lit, ruby eyes in the glare of an early winter afternoon. Smoke and steam boiled from its front end, streaming along its brown-striped sides. That much momentum was difficult to halt, but the RV was barely going at an idle when it kissed the shattered edge of a jackknife semi reclining across a heavy concrete divider. It jolted to a stop, and the hazard lights began to stutter. The sun slid behind a scrim of gray cloud, and the other two vehicles came to a cautious halt as well, both with plenty of room in front, their noses pointed unerringly for the clear lane, heading east and slightly north. "God damn it!" Broad-shouldered, dark-skinned Juju Thurgood slammed the black 4x4's door, all but vibrating with fury inside his fatigue jacket. Underneath, yellow stripes on his black sweater glowed. "Look at this! Just look at this bullshit!" The 4x's spare, held on its metal arm, was Swiss cheese riddled. Juju flung his arms out, his pink-palmed hands knotted. "Fucking crackers! You hit?" Lee Quartain barked, his window all the way down and a high blush on his stubbled cheeks from cold or adrenaline, or both. He jammed the truck's gear lever into park and stamped on the emergency brake, barely pausing before wrestling his door open and unfolding all 6 feet odd of his lanky frame out into the cold. "Juju, you fucking hit?" That settled Thurgood something wonderful. "No, ain't hit." He glared, hazel eyes wide and wild but full of sense, and the pom-pom on his blue knit cap bobbed as he shook his head. "You watch the road." Being under fire again felt almost normal. Lee glanced back into the Chevy's cab, and the bruised blonde man huddled in the passenger seat glared at him, too. Idiot. Big, bare-shouldered Brandon French was worse than useless, but Lee had other concerns at the moment. "French, grab that first aid kit under the seat." He set off for the RV, steam and smoke boiling from its front end. Ginny had kept it floored for a good bit, slewing around abandoned cars whenever they appeared, showing a fair bit of fancy driving. She was probably in a state, and Lee's shoulders were about to crawl up near his ears. He wasn't breathing quite right, and he'd been swearing under his breath for at least 5 miles. That was probably why he felt like he couldn't get a good lungful in, probably why he was sweating, too, under every layer meant to conserve body heat. What had tipped Ginny off and made her hit the gas away from the trap? Probably the still-smoking wreck blocking the rest stop exit. The murderous assholes had put it too far up the curve. It was plainly visible if you were in anything higher than a sedan. Lee hadn't been sure she'd make it once they started shooting. Brandon French was fucking useless, whimper yelling in the passenger seat without even the sense to return fire even if he'd had his damn empty carbine. Miraculously, none of the tires on the assorted vehicles had blown. They were goddamn luckier than they had any right to be, every single mother's child of them, especially if no bullets had tumbled into flesh instead of engine or car body. Lee skipped the regular door halfway down the RV's long bullet-dotted side, stalking to the front. Passenger windows were broken into glittering chunks, some of the screens on the back ones punched by flying lead, and his guts seized up. A blue-tick coonhound was barking furiously. Lee grabbed for the passenger door's handle. It was locked, and the slumped form in the seat was Steph Meacham, her fine, dark to blonde, change-color hair free of its usual scrunchie and blowing every which way. Steph! He didn't even sound like himself. It was a dry croak. Stephanie Meacham, you sit on up and unlock this now. It just proved he was a real bastard, he knew. Because what Lee was thinking was, fine, let one of the kids get hit, just not Ginny. Just let her be all right. Steph twitched. She uncurled slowly, and her big, haunted blue eyes peered over the windowsill at Lee. Strands of her hair moved on the cold breeze. Mr. Quartain, she whispered, a smattering of freckles glaring across her nose since she was transparent pale. Is it over? Seems to be. They could be coming after us in that big old truck. If so, we've got a few minutes, but I don't like our chances. Still, it was one thing to trap the unwary, and another thing to go after forewarned and possibly armed prey. Juju's swearing drifted past, borne on a cold wind. The man was probably all but kicking his tires. But we gotta move. You hit. Anyone in there hit? Please, God, I don't care what you have to do. Just let her be all right. Miss Ginny? Steph straightened further, turning in the seat, and Lee's heart hit the bottom of his guts with a splash. Christ, no. Please, no. I'm all right, he heard from deeper in the RV, hoarse, husky, and sweeter than all the angels singing to God whenever the big fellow had a desire for some music. Mark? Mark, say something. There was another mutter from inside, Mark Kasprick, proving he was still among the living. Lee hopped up on the running board, peering into the now mangled RV. Driven off the lot less than 3 days ago, damn it. Ginny Mills, deathly pale, still clutched at the steering wheel. She stared at Lee like she didn't recognize him, her pupils wide and black, chestnut curls escaping her French braid. Her lips, slightly parted, were bloodless, and her black jacket almost swallowed her whole. Her chin trembled a little before she gulped in a shallow breath, and her gaze snapped forward, and he realized she was practically standing on the brake, and probably the emergency as well. The engine bumped and thumped, and more steam boiled free. Big, blonde, useless Brandon banged on the door midway down the RV. Steph jumped, her pupils swelling, eating at her irises. Lee almost swore, swallowed it, and reached in to get the door unlocked. Traveler, yelping and yowling, was careening all over the inside. Dogs didn't take to upsets in their routine well. It had been nothing but upset for a while, despite Ginny's insistence on regular bathroom stops and mealtimes. Steph. Gently, firmly, Lee pitched the words low and soothing. Let's get this door open and that seatbelt off. Come on now. Bad enough they had to deal with the chewing once-human critters. Now they had to be wary of other survivors, too. The only wonder was that it had taken people this long to start being assholes again, or that it had taken Lee and his group this long to come across said assholes. Oh, okay. Steph fumbled at her belt catch. Mark Kasprick peered around her, his eyes huge and the rest of him cheese-pale, his dark hair standing up like it wanted to make its own break for freedom. What happened? The boy's Adam's apple bobbed. He looked scared enough to pass out or piss himself, and Lee hoped he wouldn't do either. We can chowder to cashew it later, kid. Lee settled on the most pressing question. You hit. I don't think so. Mark swallowed hard again and swayed, almost falling onto the center console. "No, I don't... What was that?" "Someone who didn't want to play nice." Lee hopped down and wrenched the door open. Steph spilled out, clearly in one piece, and Traveler scrabbled right after her, hit the ankle-deep slush, and began prance-dancing in a circle, yip-barking. "Shit." "Language," Steph said faintly, and swayed. Lee propped her against the vehicle side and was about to climb back in, but next came Mark, his hands trembling. Lee grabbed his elbow and helped him down. Back up on the running board again, almost cracking his head a good one on the top of the doorway, he pitched forward and got his feet in. The dog was running loose, but right now, Lee Quartain didn't give a single damn about anything other than the woman in the driver's seat. "Ginny. Ginny!" Slowly, dreamily, Ginny put the RV in park, eased off the emergency brake, twisted the key, and the engine died with a thankful wheeze. Then she stilled, staring out through the cracked windshield. It was a wonder the vehicle had kept going as long as it did. There were bullet holes stitched along the side. More than likely, at least one had found its way into the engine, and that was enough to make Lee sweat. Lucky again. Goddamn lucky. Unless she was hit and just didn't know it. "Ginny!" He grabbed her shoulder. "Darling, come on. We've got to move." That got her attention. Move? Her lips were downright chalky, and she didn't even shiver at the chill coming through her own rolled-down window. Both were bad signs. "Oh, sorry. The car won't... It's not running well." "No shit. You did real good, darling, but they may be coming up the road. Grab your bag. Let's go." "Okay." She nodded. Blue veins stood out against her paleness. She was almost transparent, like Steph. "Okay." She didn't move. Her hands clutched the steering wheel, her arms tense. Soft gray sunlight fell across her wrists, sparkling on those thin gold bangles caught below the cuff of her jacket. Tiny gold hoops in her ears, too. Even in the middle of all this, she was so damn city. Soft and classy and civilized, and whatever the bastards with their big truck and sealed-up RV at the rest stop wanted, it wasn't anything nice at all if they were going to shoot to get it. A hot, complex burst of something too sharp to be relief and too crooked to be clean fury filled Lee's chest, and he had to exhale sharply to shove it back down and clap a lid on it. "Ginny." He jostled her shoulder again, as gently as possible. "Come on. We've got to move." "All right." Still, she didn't let go of the wheel. She probably thought she was moving already. Shock. If she hadn't headed for the rest stop exit, God alone knows what would have happened. There were no casualties only because she was smart and had made the right decision under pressure. "Now ain't the time for that, Lee." "Ginny." It had to be the right tone, firm but not commanding, gentle enough not to spook her, but sharp enough to get her attention. "Undo your seatbelt." When she didn't move, he hit the catch. It unrolled over her chest, and that made her look up at him. Those big dark eyes, pupils too far dilated, were now swimming with hot water, which made him feel twice as unsteady, his head full of colorless fumes, just looking for a spark. Christ. "Come on." He had to work her fingers free of the wheel. "You got anything in here you can't leave?" Most of their luggage was in the back of the truck, but she needed something to focus on. Just my purse." She blinked at him, and a single tear tracked down her left cheek. Slush melt, dripping from every surface, made a thin, staticky noise while she paused. "I'm sorry. I think I killed the car." "You did good, darling." More than good. She'd done fantastic, especially for a civilian. He found her leather purse, its contents thankfully not scattered hither and yon, and scooped it up. "Come on, let's get out of here." Plum damn insane. "Why would they do that?" Skinny Steph Meacham hugged herself, pushing back into her seat with her legs like she thought she was driving and wanted to slow down. At least she was behind the front passenger seat and not Juju's. "Why?" "Some people are assholes." Mark, his arm over her shoulders, glanced guiltily at Juju. It was pretty lucky a bullet hadn't made it into the 4x's engine. They'd been shooting mostly at the RV to bottle up their victims. It was a plain miracle Miss Ginny had been able to ram past the wreck blocking the exit, too. For a librarian, that was some damn fine driving. "That they are." Juju didn't quite have the shakes, but it was close. Nobody ever liked getting shot at, but it was worse when you were almost helpless, crouching in the driver's seat and praying nothing would give out while training fought with the body's idiot responses, adrenaline soaking every tissue it could reach, and your balls crawling northward to find a more congenial home. Worst was trying to look everywhere at once because tunnel vision snuck up on you. "But it don't matter why they shot at us, kids. What matters is we got away." "Yeah." Mark, his skinny shoulders hunched, squeezed Steph again. The boy was plain gone over young Miss Meacham, and his awkward attempts at comfort probably did more to help his own self than her. Still, it was kind of nice to see. "Everyone's okay. Lee said Miss Ginny was fine." Traveler hunched on Steph's other side, his slobbery wet nose pressed to the back window Juju refused to have rolled down for him. The last thing they needed was the idiot hound deciding to take a header onto the highway. The dog didn't like being separated from Ginny, but he put up with it. And Juju was damn glad that French fellow wasn't in his 4x2. The blonde college boy would not shut up. He needed Maalox for the mouth. "I don't want him in with the kids," Lee had said, glowering, and that gave Juju a whole lot to think about. All of it was unpleasant. To cap it all, the season was just beginning. This melt, forgiving and sloppy as it was, wouldn't last forever, and they were heading northeast, right through mountains and toward winter's icy heart. Lee kept poring over atlases when they stopped, the old worry line between his eyebrows and his expression the same as it had been in the jungle once or twice when he was chewing on how to get his team out of yet another blood-drenched manure pile the brass had landed them in. You didn't have to worry too much when you were one of little Lee's folk, long as you kept your head down and did your damn job. But the man was not thinking straight, taking them towards the North Pole in winter during the goddamn apocalypse. That library gal had him all turned around, and even if she had done Juju a good turn or two, he was about wishing Lee had never laid eyes on her. Tires shushed through slush, Lee's taillights ahead glowing as the truck sped up a little. In a half hour they'd have another check-in with the walkie-talkies. This stretch of freeway was deserted, and it was a nice change. Juju forced his fingers to stop clutching the wheel. His knuckles creaked, but his legs were steady enough, especially since he was sitting down. Steph sniffled a little, and Mark said something in her ear, soft and soothing. The two of them were a pair of turtle doves, all right. Christ, he wished Billy Tipton was here. He'd have a thing or two to say about Brandon French. The two of them could even suss out how to solve the damn problem for Lee. What the lieutenant didn't know wouldn't hurt, right? You did for your own. And if he and Billy Tipton had any own to speak of, it was Lee Quartain. Except Tip was dead, his head beaten in with his own flea market lamp. And the fact that he'd been trying to chew his good buddy Juju's throat out at the time didn't change the fact of murder. Just like nothing would change the fact that the survivors of the goddamn apocalypse were just as likely to bite you as the walking dead. Shit was deep and getting deeper, with no shovel in sight. The sky was getting uglier and uglier. The walkie-talkie on the dashboard crackled with formless static. French was no doubt filling up the Chevy's cab with noise, and Lee was probably wearing that faint grimace he got when Brass Dogs was barking and the shit was rolling downhill. Traveler whined a little, and Steph patted the dog's head, smoothing behind his left ear. Mark closed his eyes, his Adam's apple bobbing as he swallowed over and over again. There was nothing that would make this pill any easier going down. "Mr. Thurgood." Steph's voice was a pale copy of its usual self. "Sir?" "Huh?" A few spatters hit the windshield. It wasn't quite sleet or snow, a sloppy in-between mix. The Chevy slowed, brake lights brightening, and a green sign proclaiming they were 10 miles from Evansboro hunched against the cold. At least they'd made it over Ole Miss. "I got a question." Soft and tentative. Well, obviously. Juju swallowed a sudden hot bite of irritation. Post-combat jitters made a soldier likely to bark if not bite, but neither of the kids deserved a toothing. "Uh-huh." Steph cleared her throat nervously, then jumped right in. "You think anyone else we come across is gonna shoot at us?" "Christ, you mean you think there's a chance they won't?" "I ain't sure." He hedged. Scaring the young'uns wasn't any use either. "But if they do, we gotta be ready." "It's like in the movies." Mark squeezed Steph tighter, and Juju forced himself to look away from the rear view and at the road in front of them. "First people die, then the survivors go crazy." The freeway dipped and rose gently as the slush receded from bare patches that would be ice come morning, and there was a 4-car smash-up looming on the horizon. Looked like it had been one of those damn checkpoints. Wouldn't that have been a shitty duty, waving cars past or checking them for sick'uns? "I ain't fixin' to go crazy anytime soon, kid." Juju watched as Lee's truck swung wide, creeping around bleached bones of twisted metal. Snow still lingered in the hollows and shadows, turning the wrecks. Looked like one car had rammed another, then both had piled into a third, and the fourth, who knew, maybe it had happened a long later, into one of those far-fetched modern art pieces. The checkpoint shack looked like something had beaten it with a hammer, frozen canvas flopping stiffly as the breeze rose. Its supports were all twisted, and he decided not to look too closely at the shapes inside. At least those shapes weren't moving. "Well, I mean, nobody ever wants to go crazy." Kasprek said it like he'd thought the matter over some. A half snort of laughter caught in the back of Juju's throat. He coughed and almost spat on the windshield. "Well now, Mark, let me tell you something. Most people were plumb damn insane before this apocalypse. This just lets 'em all the way loose, instead of worrying about what the neighbors gonna think." Neither of them had anything to say to that, and it was just as well. Juju had some hard thinking to do, and wanted some quiet to get through it. He squinted at the sky again and turned the wipers on. Looked like it was deciding to snow instead of sleet. Good breeding. Evansboro was a good-sized town, clinging to the edges of city. Its building bones hunched dark and dispirited under a pall of falling snow, just like Ginny huddled in the middle of the Chevy's bench seat. Her hands hurt because they kept balling up, trying to drive her fingernails into her palms. Her head hurt, too. Her shoulders, her teeth, her legs, all aching. Why? She'd only driven through a hail of bullets and several miles down a freeway before running a new RV into a jackknife semi, hunching over a concrete divider, the truck's other half squatting on a red Dodge SUV that stood with all its doors open at the tail end of a clot of smashed glass and twisted metal from the opposite direction. It had felt like she was going 50, but the airbags hadn't even deployed. She hadn't been going very fast at all. Lee made a soft sound, not quite a whistle, one of his driving noises. The wipers went back and forth, clumping up wet snow along the edges of the windshield. Brandon, big, blond, and bulky on her other side, stared out the window. A faint ghost of cologne still clung to his jacket. It wasn't like Lee's peppery aftershave. Brandon's held an edge of sweat and expensive chemicals. Both of them had 5 o'clock shadows, though. At least they had something in common. She suspected it wasn't enough to get them to work together, and she couldn't figure out how to make them. A great exhaustion at the pointlessness settled over her whenever she thought about trying to. It wasn't worth it. Was anything? That made twice in the recent past she'd been shot at, first by the army in Cotton Crossing as they chased one of the things, the shuffling, chewing infected, the zombies. Then shot at again. God, why? Why would anyone who survived the past few weeks want to shoot anyone else? At least anyone presumably healthy enough to drive. Trying to guess why people acted the way they did was useless, too, at least at this juncture. Ginny shut her eyes. Every time she did, though, she heard the little popping noises of bullets hitting thin metal and fiberglass and felt the RV jerk under her hands. Her eyelids flew open again and she shuddered, her shoulder bumping Brandon's. "Hey." Brandon's large gloved mitt swallowed her right hand. The bruised left side of his face looked like it hurt. "Loosen up a little, huh?" "I can't." "Sorry," she managed. Her throat was raw dry. Tea sounded good. Water sounded better. A hot bath and crawling into a bed, any bed, as long as the room was dark and quiet, sounded best of all. God, what she wouldn't give to be in her own house right now. Except the power was out all over Cotton Crossing, and on the other side of the wall, separating her half of the duplex from her neighbors, there were bodies. An entire family gone. An entire town gone. Coast to coast, the man on public television had said. The mind boggled. Except her problem was it didn't boggle. She could imagine it all too vividly. "Sorry," she mumbled again, forgetting she'd already apologized. The truck bumped over ridges of snow, melted, compacted, refrozen, and melted again. Chains bit deep, and Lee exhaled again, concentrating on keeping them on the road. "Don't be." Brandon considered her hand for a second, then stripped his right glove off, pulling on the fingertips with his teeth. With that done, he got her glove off as well, which meant she had to spread her fingers. They kept wanting to curl back up, but he patiently undid them each time. After a little while, he got her left glove off, too, and his own. His skin was warm, and he stretched her fingers out, rubbed between them. "My mom had arthritis," he said, finally, blue eyes half-lidded. "I used to help her, massage her fingers and stuff. We weren't supposed to, but she said it felt good." His head dropped forward, with his chin down and the longer top of his blonde hair falling across his forehead. He looked very young. The puffing and bruising from Lee's punch would take a while to go down. Dad said she just wanted a young man to hold her hand.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?